Cispa is a law that the mainstream media is not paying much attention to, but it recently passed the House, and the president is threatening to veto it. Thank God. Let's hope he sticks to it. Sometimes he says he'll veto something, and oftentimes he doesn't do it, and we'll see if there's any amendments, etc. But what does it do? Well, Cispa overrules all existing federal and state laws by saying, notwithstanding any other provision of law, including privacy policies and wiretap laws, companies may share cybersecurity-related information with any other entity, including the federal government. Now, why is that so dangerous? Well, if you don't have to follow the wiretap laws or any other laws, private companies can take your information, share it with the other companies, share it with the government. They can just take your emails, your web searches, etc., and you have no privacy anymore. It's no longer illegal to share it with the government. That would be a gross violation of the Fourth Amendment, but apparently no one cares anymore. Now, there was an amendment that was proposed by Alan Grayson, which made all the sense in the world, right? It said it required the National Security Agency and the FBI and Homeland Security and other agencies to secure a warrant obtained in accordance with the Fourth Amendment before searching a database for evidence of criminal wrongdoing. Now, think about how logical that is. There's Alan Grayson saying, if you think you've got any kind of suspicion on someone, well, I want you to search for him. You get a warrant, you go search as much as you want. If you think somebody's breaking the law, let's go get him. But we have to follow the Constitution. You can't just go on a fishing expedition, let me see if anybody's guilty of anything, and then use their private information against them. And have the government and corporations almost merge in a state, in a sense, to be able to do this. Well, it's grossly unconstitutional. So obviously conservatives who always talk, don't tread on me, the Constitution, Second Amendment, right? They're going to be on your side, right? Liberals, etc. Well, some are, but not all of them, right? Libertarians, where are you? You guys are the ones that, claim to care most about the Constitution. I mean, look, all of us claim to care about the Constitution. When it's actually on the line, not so much. The vote was 288 to 127 in the House to pass this. Crazy. Of course, they say, no, we're going to chase after cybersecurity crimes, child porn, kidnapping. But, look, it could be all the laws, including, if anybody committed seriously bodily harm to anyone. What's serious bodily harm? I don't know. Let's go on a fishing expedition and find out. By the way, one of the laws that they could use to try to get your, as an excuse to get your private information, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Now remember, that's what they tried to prosecute Aaron Swartz on, because he violated, they claimed, a term of service in a private contract he had with a company. You know that they use that law to go after someone for filling out their MySpace profile wrong? I'm not kidding. They're using that as a prosecution of a woman now because they say, oh, you lied in your MySpace profile. So apparently, if you fill out your Facebook, your Twitter, MySpace, whatever it is, profile wrong, I mean, it gives you a sense of how ridiculously minor the offenses are. They're like, who cares? That gives us to go and do warrantless searches, find all of your emails, everything you've ever done on the web because of Cispa. Now, it hasn't passed the Senate and it hasn't been signed by the president yet, but look at how overwhelming it was in the House because the government can't wait to grab all your information. So what is their excuse for this? Well, Representative Mike Rogers, the head of the House Intelligence Committee who's pushing this, has a bunch of great excuses. He says, Cispa is so important to our national security. Well, look, you got a national security issue. My guess is a judge is going to give you a warrant. Hey, listen, we're chasing after some bombers or terrorists or cybersecurity issues. Can I get a warrant? The judge is going to go, yeah, right away, here's your warrant, go. But they don't want to do that. They want to chase after the people that they're not happy with, right? Otherwise, they could write the law in a much narrower way. Mike Rogers says, this is not a surveillance bill. It does not allow the national security agencies or the Department of Defense or our military to monitor our domestic networks. Wrong again, Bob. That's exactly what it does. So it's just, he's flat out lying about it. It allows the NSA, the FBI, etc., to monitor all of our web activity without getting any warrants, okay? Now, it doesn't require that the companies work with them, but it says the companies may work with them and may work with each other. So this doesn't hurt the companies at all. In fact, it gives them more power. So unsurprisingly, Cispa supporters include Time Warner Cable, Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, EMC, IBM, Intel, McAfee, and Oracle. In other words, we are totally screwed. And by the way, Adam Schiff, who's a Democrat from California, tried to get this law to say, hey, if the companies are going to work with the government and you're trying to track down something that went wrong, okay, something that's illegal and you need to get on top of right away, at least in the beginning, don't give the people's personal information as you go on a fishing expedition. Don't connect the names to the accounts. Later, if you've got evidence, obviously you can get the name, right? They said no. No, it doesn't matter. We're going to connect the name to the account, and we're going to get into your private lives, and we're going to find out all about it. This is the biggest violation of the Constitution I've seen in a long time. Now we go back to Mike Rogers, and this is getting really funny. He says it does something very simple. It allows the government to share zeros and ones with the private sector. Oh, I see. It's just zeros and ones because it's digital. Oh, why didn't you tell me that? Now the zeros and ones turns into the website you were looking at, which might or might not have been porn. The zeros and ones turns into your private email where you talk to your mistress. Oh, golly gee, you were against the government. We found out that information about you. Oops, how did that happen? They're just zeros and ones. Well, hey, look, Mike Rogers, if they're just zeros and ones, why don't you hand over all your private email to me? They're just zeros and ones, right? Why don't I get to see what websites you went to, Mike Rogers? You want me to do that? Republican? You really do? You sure? They're just zeros and ones. I mean, look at that weak sauce answer. Because he knows they're coming to get your private information, and this is a terrible excuse for it. It gets better. I love these next two things. He says, this is a critical bipartisan first step for enabling Americans' private sector to defend itself. Okay, a poor private sector, they're just so defenseless now. They just don't have enough power in America. So finally, corporations are getting the protection that they sorely needed from the American government. And I love his thing of like, what? I'm trying to help companies, obviously. In fact, the next quote is even better. Quote, we have yet to find a single United States company that opposes this bill. Now, what's great about that is him basically saying, people, citizens, my voters, who are they? If no company opposes the bill, then obviously we're going to pass it. Now, sometimes we have companies on one side, companies on the other side. SOPA, we had the digital companies fighting the Hollywood companies. We got money out of both of them, and then we had a real debate as to who should win based on who gave us more donations. In this case, most of the donations are all coming from companies that like this. Well, if no company disagrees, why wouldn't the U.S. government, which works for multinational corporations, obviously pass the law? How about the citizens? How about the United States Constitution? Now, he's technically wrong. Some companies have flipped on Cispa. For example, Facebook and Microsoft say they're no longer in favor, but the context is more important. Now, of course, you can't have a law without the congressman going to the well on national security. So, of course, in the beginning, they talked about 9/11, and then we go to Mike McCaul, Republican of Texas, who said this. Recent events in Boston demonstrate that we have to come together as Republicans and Democrats. In the case of Boston, there were real bombs. In this case, they are digital bombs, and these digital bombs are on their way. Be scared, be very scared, and hand over all of your rights to me. Leave it to them to not waste a second to demagogue and fear-monger based on Boston, which has absolutely nothing to do with Cispa, and handing over all of our private information so that the state and private corporations can work together to spy on us. So, of course, our hope is that the Senate defeats this and the president follows through on his veto threat. But history being any guide, don't get too hopeful on that. My guess is they will make some slight adjustments and go, oh, problem solved, let's pass it now. After all the companies agree.